Zound fam! Well, it appears I'm a day late and a dollar short with this particular topic, but we push on. So, for the last few days this week, there's been a great amount of consternation. Whoa, what a shock! When isn't there? So, Xbox might be in a wee bit of trouble with their public image. Yet again, there's a shock. It seems that Big Phil, Mr. Spencer, the dude in charge of Xbox, is basically ready to concede that, Xbox has won the completely nonsense, by the way, console wars. We had it back in the day with the Nintendo and the Sega. We've had it through these last near 30 years with PlayStation and Xbox. And the two companies have obviously over time further and further diverged in how they go about things and how they market and how they put games out and how they basically control their entire ecosystems, which is entirely their right. And it's the ecosystems and the controllers and the way that the types of games that are produced by these two individual corporate, remember that word, corporate groups, that basically guide our decisions as gamers as to where we want to go and what we want to play and who, crucially, we get to play with. Because not everybody, in fact most people, can only afford one system. Alright? So, me personally, I'm a worker. I have a family, I have a house, I've got rent, I've got taxes, I've got to pay for food, I've got to pay for electricity, I've got to pay for my gas bill. And for those in North America, I mean gas as in household heating, not as in a car. Okay, I know you guys got fill up my gas tank. No. Gas over here means like central heating and stuff and water heating and that. Let's not put that to the side. Anyway. Oh, speaking of things to the side, please remember to keep watching the video right to the end. That way, when you get to the end, in the comment section, let me know what the next video was that YouTube said suggested for you, so then I can understand you better and serve you guys better in the future. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so on one hand, we've got Microsoft these last few years, they've ploughed deeper and deeper into their Game Pass, making what's been commonly called the best deal in gaming. And Game Pass has come along and have done, day of release, so games come out day one on Xbox. You can either go to a shop, hand over your money, and get a copy of the game. Or you can pay that yearly or monthly subscription and get all those games on the store, and you go, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one. In fact, if you want to, you can just go tick and have them all. Any game coming out on Xbox, first party, boom, it's yours. Which sounds wonderful, but then again, how much time do you actually have to play them all? Let's be fair. Not all of us are having those times. Not all of us are like Dreamcast guy and can play every game ever all the time, because that's all we get to do with our days is get to game and make awesome YouTube content. Big up to Dreamcast guy, sir, you're a legend. Anyway, then you've got PlayStation. PlayStation, very strong focus on first player games. Xbox is very strong focus on multiplayer games, but both do obviously converge and do both. But it is fair to say that Sony is more focused on that single player narrative experience. But personally, the type of games I prefer. I like online games, I like playing with others, but given the way that it goes for work and such, trying to be an active member in a consistent online world where I've got to keep pushing my stats and everything, it's just not possible in my lifestyle right now. A couple of years ago, different. Now, not so much. Maybe in the future, could be again. Who knows? Anyway, so you've got that from Sony. So they're always about making the games, selling the games, pushing the games. And they have their game, and they have, of course, PlayStation Plus, which, as of about for the last couple of years now, has been in that state where you've got those three separate tiers. You've got your basic tier, which are essential, where you can have your online space, you get your free games a month, and not really too much more. It's a very stripped down version. It's what PlayStation Plus was back when there was only two tiers. There used to be like an upper tier and the lower tier, and the lower tier is what essentially is basically now. The tier I'm on, extra, you get those free games, you get the storage, you also get a few extra titles chucked in that are just like this generation. So you get roughly about 6 or 7 games a month, but the first three games come out for the essential members, and then a little bit later, like about a week or two, generally speaking, you get a few more games for the extra members. Boom. And while they happen, they also get games for the premium members. They get a few more games, and they get access to stream PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games. I think they get PlayStation 3 games, but that's only streaming. When quite frankly, the system should be backwards compatible, because it's the same technology. And let's face it, the PlayStation 5 has certainly got the power. Of course, there's aspect ratios and yada yada yada. But it is nice that you do have trophy support for these older games. But there's definitely a difference of how it's done. And Sony's very much about being, you can buy the games. And I like that. I like to buy my games physically. I like to own my games. And then I like to trade my games in. Although admittedly, Game are about to make that more difficult, as I discussed in a video a wee while ago, where Game are basically going to shut down their whole trade-in structure, which is the most profitable part of their business. Yeah, go figure that one out, boys and girls. So, Microsoft have basically said, look, we're not profitable, we're not making it happen. Chances are we're going to start putting games out for all the systems. So, Nintendo, you're getting our games, Sony, you're getting our games. And this raises a bunch of very interesting talking points. To me anyway, and probably to you. In fact, the reason you probably came here is you want to know what Zemblo thinks of this whole shebang. Well, let's start with the whole FTC filing. Because after all, Microsoft just spent the last, 2 and a bit years going, we'd like to buy these companies. We'd like to become the largest game production company there is by owning all these other companies. I mean, they bought Bethesda, and they bought Activision, they bought King, they've bought a lot of stuff, and over the years they've bought studios here and there. But the major problem that Microsoft have had was actually pushing games out the door, and then selling them. Because what's been happening is, even though when they sell the games, they're technically selling them at a major loss, because they've been trying to flog Game Pass, and Game Pass is all the games for, comparatively speaking, when you consider the amount of money each of those games is worth, it's commensurately smaller. So a small amount of money for a huge amount of games, hence why, as I said before, it's often considered to be the best value deal in gaming. But how long can Microsoft do this? I mean, yes, okay, they're one of the biggest corporations on the planet, but nothing lasts forever. You can't keep spending that kind of money for that kind of return, even if you are like Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, even Mark Zuckerberg goes, there are limits, guys. Even Jeff Bezos goes, there are limits, guys. Which basically means that the high-ups at Microsoft are going to go, well, dude, there's a limit, mate. And considering that it's been the case pretty much from the jump on this particular generation that we're in currently, that for like every Xbox Series system that is sold, it's like what? It's like 4, maybe 5 PlayStation 5s are sold. Wow. And of course, last generation, yeah, it has to be said that like Xbox, right at the very beginning, did kind of poop the bed with their whole TV. We do have another system for those of you that can't afford to take this model on. We call it the Xbox 360. The DRM requirements, the initial start with the you can't trade your games, you can't share your games, and then the backpedaling on that, and you know, we've all remember that classic clip of Shuhei Yoshida and was it Adam Boyes, I think it was. It was like, here's how you share your games on PlayStation. Thanks. I mean, and the fact that like there's always just been this thing in the media where when somebody says gaming, most people in the world, now not us gamers, people, okay, like your average Joe, citizen, John Smith, Janet Smith, whatever, your average person, if you say gaming to somebody around about the age of, say, 30 to maybe 50, and you say gaming, they're probably going to think of a PlayStation. And they're probably going to be thinking of a PlayStation 2. That's just how it goes. I mean, remember there was a time when the PlayStation 2 basically ruled the world. It is still, to this day, in 2024, okay, 24 years after the PlayStation 2 came out, because remember that sucker came out in the year 2000, it is still, even now, the best selling video game console there's ever been, which is saying something considering some of the competition that's come out over the years. The Switch, the Nintendo Wii, both of those systems epic sellers. And the PlayStation 5, even though it's not sold the same as the PlayStation 2, it has sold quickly, even with the amount of slowdown there was in being able to push the systems out because of the lack of bits and pieces to build the systems with. I mean, remember, for the first year and a half, 2 years of the PlayStation 5, it was really hard to get a PlayStation 5 because there just wasn't enough of them, because they couldn't physically make them. And to add to that, Microsoft went and bought a bunch of the resources so they could push their systems out faster. It's even crazier when you realise that both companies released a disc version and a discless version. Microsoft took the core idea of taking their discless version and making it slightly less capable than its full fat disc version. I mean, it doesn't have as big a memory, and so on and so forth. Whilst the PlayStation guys, when they got their two systems, the PlayStation 5 Disc Edition and the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition, exactly the same units all the way through, except one had a disc drive and one didn't. And now you can actually go out and buy a PlayStation 5 where you can buy it as a discless version, or if you want to, you can buy it as a disc version. But thirdly, you can buy the discless version, and later on down the road, although admittedly it will cost you a wee bit more, you can buy the disc drive, take off that part of the panel, slap that puppy on, and you've got a disc drive PS5. Now, yes, admittedly, there is a problem where you have to register the disc drive to the system and also to the PlayStation Network. So that means that in a few years there's a possibility that when PlayStation 5 Network goes away in favour of PlayStation 6 later on down the road, I mean, like PlayStation 3 is nearly closed, PlayStation PSP is definitely closed, and I think they're getting ready to close PlayStation Vita's online network. Or at least they closed their stores, that's for certain. I think they closed the PS3 store, I'm pretty sure about that. So there's always juggling going on. But what's really interesting is the fact that Microsoft can now sell these games everywhere. So they've got all the rights to all these games. And now they go, well, obviously we'll sell them on our system, and then we'll sell them on your system, and we'll sell them on your system. And we've got them on PC as well. So they can basically garner money from all the gamers. And for me, as a guy that can only ever afford one system, this means wonderful, wonderful things. For one, I only have to keep one controller layout in my head. And with that controller, I've got symmetrical sticks. Because I've played Xbox games on Xbox with an Xbox controller, and it's a perfectly cromulent bit of kit. And it's a really nice, there's nothing wrong with the Xbox per se. But me personally, just the way my brain works or something, or how I'm comfortable in my hands, I like a symmetrical stick layout game controller. The off-center sticks of Microsoft, it doesn't fit well in my brain. That's it. That's the only thing that really is a barrier to me for Microsoft and their games and how they set up their systems. It's just the fact of the offset sticks. If Microsoft were to put out a first-party controller with all the abilities and all the strengths and all the rest of it of their mainline controller, but with symmetrical sticks, and obviously I had the money and the extra HDMI port on my telly and yada yada yada, then there'd be very little in that regard that would actually stop me going, hey, I could play an Xbox game. And I've played Xbox games and yeah, I've done alright, but it's never felt as natural for my hands, ergo my brain, to pick up that pad and my fingers feel and thumbs feel like they're in the right place, doing the right thing. That's just how I'm built. I can't, I can't take me back to the shop and go, excuse me, can I get a tune-up? This doesn't work with humans. So that means, okay, that all these games are available to all these systems, all these gamers, and all those wallets. Which is actually the dream, okay? The fact that everybody gets to play everything. Have we not spoke about that forever? It's like, why can't I play this game? Why can't I play that game? Which always has led to me in the past going, you made your bed, you lie in it. I bought a PlayStation, therefore I can't play Halo. I have to live with that. And I had to live with the idea before that I wouldn't be able to play the next Fallout, and that I wouldn't be able to play Starfield. I don't know. Some of the things I've seen about Starfield, maybe I don't wanna. But there's been a lot of games I've always wanted to have a crack at Crackdown. I've always wanted to have a go at the Gotham Racing series. There's been many games that have come on Xbox that to me have looked most appealing. I mean, for instance, Hi-Fi Rush. That looked really like a lot of fun and right up my street. And now apparently, we PlayStation boys are getting that. Woohoo! I mean, that just sounds wonderful. And it means that, because that game is under Microsoft Studios, when it sells, and it will sell on PlayStation, that they'll get revenue from that. Also, a few days ago, it was shown that there was an accidental tweet saying Microsoft Game Pass instead of Xbox Game Pass. So it seems that Microsoft is definitely moving in this direction, where they intend just to sell their games as a service to everybody. So much like you could buy that Ubisoft loader as a side of your PlayStation Plus, there's a separate loader that's just for Ubisoft. If you're not prepared to do that, you can have just Ubisoft games if you're a big Ubisoft nut, and they all come to your system regardless. So that could basically mean that you can have all those Microsoft games, all those Xbox games, on whatever bit of kit you own. They'll probably at some point, even once the technology gets better and once the networks are better, have a TV app. They'll probably you turn on your fancy dancy new TV, something that looks like it belongs to CES, and you'll go like, well, I have the latest television. There we go, Xbox app. Input your details, and there'll be an app. There'll be a part of it. Have a payment screen, and you'll pay for either a monthly or a weekly or a yearly, and probably even they'll have a decadely. Who knows? If indeed the network lasts a decade, who knows? But let's just say there's a yearly option. You smack forward your money, and then you could just play games, and you could probably use any controller you like. You could probably even get a controller from the Google Stadia, if you've got one of those knocking about, because they released the code on those so they could be used on anything with anything. Or you could have a DualSense, you could have an Xbox controller, you could have a Mad Cat. It doesn't even matter. As long as as long as you were able to connect it to the telly via Bluetooth, that's it. You're good to go. And that's the strong position that Microsoft could take in the market. They could go, yeah, okay, we don't have systems anymore, but we have all these games, and all of you want to buy them. So there is a good thing about that. However, there is a snag. At that point, when it comes to the console market, there'll then only technically be two people, or two companies, or two corporate groups, depending, as I said before, corporate, that's the important word here, that actually will be making physical systems with controllers for you to use in your own home. Because considering that Sony and Nintendo are still as big as they are in Japan, which Xbox has never truly cracked, let's face it. The Japanese market is super keen on its physical games. So I think that even the next generation, PlayStation 6, and obviously whatever Nintendo's next system is going to be, I reckon those two systems will still have physical games. That's just my own personal. I could be wrong about that. But if you're hearing a continuous sort of little high-pitched sound, that's my rat sleeping, and he's quite old. He's like nearly 3 years old, so he's got a little bit of the old respiratory problems, but he's still a lovely wee rat. So there could be the case that with only two system manufacturers left on the marketplace, that considering that Nintendo is in a very different position in the market, that they're always half a generation behind or half a generation ahead, depending on how you look at it and when the systems come out, that they're not really a direct competitor to Sony, and they were obviously not a direct competitor to Sony and Microsoft these last 2 or 3 go-rounds. They were doing their own thing, in their own way, in their own space, at their own time. So, there's a possibility, and it's not a great possibility, that Sony could get lazy. They could get complacent. They've done it before, and we really could do it and doing it again. We need Sony to always be pushing, always be innovating, always coming up with new, interesting ideas. However, there is a glimmer of hope in that. If indeed they don't have to worry so much about always pushing forward, maybe they could put more of that energy into actual R&D and make newer, more interesting games that do newer and more interesting things. I mean, it is become the case that a lot of the games we play right now, at this point in the 9th generation, when you look at the structure of games, they're not really that different. Yes, they're prettier. Yes, they're more intelligent. Yes, they're more immersive. But what we actually do in a game and the people we meet and the characters we come into and stuff, there's not that much that's really different. Put it this way, right? Let's take the example of Bethesda. Now you play, let's say, Fallout 3. Okay, you put up Fallout 3 on a PlayStation 3 or an Xbox 360 or PC even. And you meet a character out in the wilderness and you have a discussion with them. How does that character react? They stand like this, they look dead at the camera, and they respond and tell you their story and give you the mission objective. And every once in a while you'll get like 3 or 4 wee options at the bottom of the screen of how you wish to proceed in the conversation. And they will answer to that particular prompt, and they will move forward in the narrative, and they don't really move from this position, they don't look around, and it's very sterile, it's very static. Whilst although people want to give it a lot of rubbish, when you look at Cyberpunk 2077, the NPCs in that were much more dynamic. You would have a conversation with them and they'd be walking about, they'd be looking around, they'd be sitting, they'd be maybe having a ciggy, having a drink, and they'd be much more alive in their mannerisms. They would actually have mannerisms. They wouldn't just stare dead-eyed at the camera and talk at you in a monotone. They would actually seem to have some agency. And I think there needs to be more push in that direction. Because games can't just keep looking prettier and prettier and prettier. Because eventually we will reach an idea of complete and utter photorealism for those games who want to do that. If that is indeed the art style of a developer's choice, it's for photorealism. Which is fine and dandy, but it's not for everybody and it's not for every game. Not every game should be a photorealistic, open world of infinite possibilities. Some games, I mean, look behind me at Borderlands 3. That game is a ton of fun, and it's all like mad cel shaded, kind of cartoonish. Games can be different. Games can be just as different and crazy as your eye. And that's what makes gaming good. So there's no need to obsess completely about how a game looks, but how a game plays, how a game feels, how a game interacts back and forth with the player or players. That, my friends, is the true leap forward. Never mind, like destructible environments and characters that remember your presence. There needs to be interactions that feel more like interactions you actually have in life. Even not just technically in life, just interactions that, that aren't just a flat experience, that are textured. So as long as Sony keeps pushing forward, and if they keep pushing forward in those respects, and then that's how they also push their studios, then Microsoft are going to have to push their studios. So hopefully at least the games, maybe not the systems, but at least the games will keep on pushing forward and pushing forward and pushing forward, trying to make them more and more and more technically interesting. Not just technically beautiful, but technically more fun and more immersive. So I personally think that the future is bright in this particular regard, but we have to keep them honest. We have to make sure that when we're forking over our money, that 1, we're getting a physical game, that 2, we're not supporting studios that push out broken games as quickly as they possibly can. We're gonna wait for games that are actually built. I mean, how many times in the last couple of years have you had a game come out and everybody online is like, well, this game's a broken, buggy mess. And they're talking about, this road, they're always about their roadmap and their ideas for day one patches. And I'm sorry, but if you're asking for 70 quid off me for a video game, then that game needs to be ready. That game needs to be up and to standard. And the whole idea that there's talk of games getting even more expensive in the future, I'm sorry, but in the words of David Lee Roth, honey, that dog will not hunt. This is just ridiculous. It's a crazy notion. And this idea that games could, like they're talking about Grand Theft Auto 5, there's always these reports I've seen online that the game cost anywhere from 100 to 150 quid. Are you having a giraffe? You seriously think I'm paying 150 quid for a Grand Theft Auto? I don't care if it makes my toast in the morning. I am not buying Grand Theft Auto 150 quid. You are dreaming, son. So in conclusion, for all the stuff I'm saying, there is no console wars, or at least what there is what's been kept alive by extremists and by Xbox and by ponies. And they're clinging on to a dead race that doesn't matter. What does matter is gaming. And as long as we keep to the positives that I've spoken of in this here video, then the future of gaming could very well be a very positive, very profitable, and much more edifying experience than it's ever been. It could also be, a corporate wasteland. Time will tell. And hopefully, you'll tell me what you saw at the end of this video. Hashtag support Scottish YouTubers, and of course, as always, aye, nae bother.